We are finishing Masech Kumlan and Ablat Gemara. We are up to the ultimate daf of Masech Yevamos, which is definitely a major achievement, a major milestone. We will stop right before the ending. Anybody can finish the ending for themselves, could be saying davening. And okay, let's begin. We are up to actually Kuf Chaf Aleph on the base, on the bottom of the page, and we're talking about this very subject of Goyim can be believed. And the Mishnah says you can believe Goyim only if they had no intention of saying testimony. They would only have intention, they were just, talking. Talking innocently, and we just happened to glean something. You made an argument where they didn't have intention to with their testimony something should happen, maybe, but as long as they have my testimony, that's all right. The other opinion says no, even that's no good, because they might not be honest. It's only if they happen to be telling us something, and then we say, oh, okay. So now we're up to the interesting story in the bottom of the page. 3 lines on the bottom of the page, Kuf Aleph on the base. There's a guy to have a common Yisrael. He said to Eid, I want you on Shabbos to go ahead and cut down some fodder for me, some grain, whatever it is that has not really matured. I want you on Shabbos to give it to my animals. I want you to Chal Shabbos. And then he threatens the Yid. And if not, I will kill you. Like I killed this other Yid once. I once told him, I insisted that he should cook for me something on Shabbos. Well, he refused. And I killed him. So this is the testimony that he gave. And he was using it to threaten this Yid. Shama Devisu, so the wife of that Yid, who the Yid who was meant to cook something and was killed, but also the Kamed Abaya came before Abaya and to ask what to do. Well, this is the second time we have in this Masechta where Abaya so was a bit lost, which is surprising. Shahisa, so Abaya waited to Lasa Rigli, 3 Yomim Tevim. He waited 3 Yom Tevim because on Yom Tov the students get together to hear the drasha every Yom Tov. Hilchos a Pesach b'Pesach, Hilchos a Chag b'Chag, and then he decided he'll ask all the Talmidei Chacham what they think. Can we rely on the testimony of this goy or not? Now, I just want to tell you what Rashi says because it's a fascinating Rashi. We just had Gimel Tammuz, and a lot of people spend Shabbos at the oil, which was the Yahrzeit Gimel Tammuz. So Rashi, I'm going to quote you Rashi inside, the second line from the top. I saw in the tshuva of the Goyim. What's this Tolosa Rigli? Kol hanech Rigli da Amaroi. Whenever it says Rigli, we normally translate Yom Tov. And on Yom Tov itself, they used to give shiurim and everybody used to come and assemble there. Rashi says, I heard from the Goyim, I saw in the tshuva of the Goyim. Hainu, you know what it is? Yom Shemez Boy Adam Gadol, the yahrzeit of a great tzaddik. Koivim Oisel L'chvoidei. They establish it as a day set aside to remember that tzaddik. Umidei Shana B'Shana, an anniversary of that yahrzeit. Kishemagiya Oisel Yom, when that day comes around, Miskaptiv Tamidei Chachamim Mikol Sriba, gathered together all these Tamidei Chachamim from all the different areas. Uboyim Al Kivrei, and they go to the oil. Im Shara not only Tamidei Chachamim, but the rest of the people, Lahoishiv Yeshivasham, to spend the day there and learn and Fabrein and so on and so forth. Incredible. So here you have, they did what we do with the Gimel Tammuz, they did over there back then, the times of Abaya and the times of the Gemara. They would do that all the time. Okay, says the Gemara further, on the top of the page, so Ad Barabba said, go to Rabbi Yosef, the Choriv Sakini. He has a very sharp knife, which is a little bit difficult to understand because if you remember the Gemara End of Harius, we learned that Rabbi Yosef was compared to Sinai, and Rabbah was Eiker Harim. Rabbah used to move mountains. Rabbi Yosef had a encyclopedia, but Rabbah was one who was sharp. And here the Gemara is saying Rabbi Yosef himself was the one who was sharp. And therefore some other people have a guess it's not Rabbi Yosef, but someone that's Rabbah, who they're saying to, and not Rabbi Yosef. But anyway, he had a very sharp knife, which means he's very analytical. He can tear it apart, and he'll figure it out. Other comments, he went for Rabbi Yosef, Pasha Hamastis, and he resolved it from the following mission. Says, question is, was he just bragging to threaten him? This is empty just talk, or this is actually reliable what he said. So Goy was trying to sell fruits in the marketplace. And he said, these fruits are from a tree, a sapling, young sapling. And why he said that is he didn't realize that arla is forbidden. He thought by saying that fruits from a young sapling are much tastier and richer than fruits from an older tree, which is much drier. So he was trying to promote himself. Shalazika Azika Rashi is one Shalazika is that it's a closed-in area, and therefore the things grow better. And there was the year Shemitah, but Rashi says not happy. He says, and what's wrong with an area on Shemitah being closed? Doesn't make the fruits usher. And Taisa disagrees. He brings from elsewhere that definitely it is usher. If it's in Teres Kainim, it says that if it's closed off area, it is usher. Yeah. Anyway, so then what he said, net of the vine. Where is it? Net to the vine or net to the vine. Again, he's trying to say it's a young tree, the 4th year, but really he didn't realize that net to the vine is also forbidden. You know, so the din is la'amaklum. You buy it from him, you don't have to worry about net to the vine. You don't have to worry about shemitah or anything. You know why? The guy was just coming up with all of these different marketing ploys that people should buy from him. And that one word he said is true. His only intention was to improve his mekach, his sales. Same thing over here. The guy was threatening the Yid. He wanted the Yid to go ahead and work on Shabbos for him. So he told him above Maisa that he killed another Yid, but it never happened. Aber Yudin side, no Maisa Yisrael. We have this one story with a guy in the Yid, but they were traveling. He said, Chaval al Yehudi. He said the following. Whoa, pity on this Yid Shahaya Imi Baderech. We're traveling together. Shemeis Baderech, he died on the road. We kivartim and I buried him. The Ishtar, and based on that, they allowed his wife to get remarried. So this testimony of a guy, but the guy wasn't testifying in order to testify. He was just lamenting the sad story that happened, that his person died. Big Malchek is a shame because here he says Vikivartiv. Is a big Malchek shame is the only way you believe a guy is if he actually said I buried him, or it just so happened to be that's the story, but it's not really relevant whether he buried him or not, as long as he says I saw that he died. Another story is, so this is an individual Yid. Maisa, there's now another story, but a group of people, so the Chiddush here is that even on a group of people he's believed. We're going traveling, woe is to this group of people, they all die, and I buried them. And again, he was just he was lamenting the fact that they all passed away. They see it, and they allowed all their women to get married. Another story happened. 60 people, which is even a larger group. So just all the same stories, but each group is larger. And we were saying that it's so reliable that even the impact 60 couples, we still believe. They're traveling to the city Beta. A guy came along and said, we're going there. They all died. And I buried them all. A bit hard to understand how he buried 60 people single-handedly. They see it in Shazam, and yet they relied on him and married off their wives. So you see, we do believe Goyim as long as it's not really testimony or something. Mishnah. We're so, sometimes we're very strict and sometimes very lenient when it comes to Aguna. Even if there wasn't during the day when the sun was bright, it was only a candlelight and they saw the features of the person and say, oh, I recognize that person, or moonlight, and they say, we recognize it, that's it, it's done. And she can marry based on that. If you hear a voice, machlekes in the version whether baska means literally a baska, we always say you hear a voice ring out of heaven, but there's nobody there, or you just heard a voice from a human that said this and this, but they didn't see anybody there. They couldn't see who that person was who was making that statement, but they just saw that. They heard that. A guy standing on top of a mountain, and he's complaining. He may say, this person died. They went to the mountain, they couldn't find the person, the source of that voice. And that was sufficient to go ahead and marry his wife. We'll talk about that in a minute. But my son was incident, and he's playing. The guy said, look, I'm dying. My name is so-and-so. The snake bit me with poison, the snake, and I'm dying. And I'm dying. They went, and nobody knew who he was and never saw him before. But based on this testimony, they went ahead and they married off his wife. In other words, we're very lenient. Generally, wouldn't believe any of these things, but here we're very lenient. Bishami says, you cannot marry based on the Basco. You do marry, obviously, our mission is based on, and that's halacha. Why are you telling us this, Bryson? I just want to tell you, he wants to inform you that the mishtacha, that if you find stomach, a bright or something, or another mishnah, the Masiyan Bishami, find another mishnah that says that you don't marry, you should know that the author of that is Bishami. And the first one trying to work out what do you mean you find another mishnah? In order to be an Amor, qualified to be an Amor, you have to know every mishnah. So maybe stomach here actually means a brisa and not a mishnah. says further, so they went and they couldn't find. So now the question is, Haino was a human. Maybe it was some demon who made that this testimony on top of the mountain. How can you rely on it? It had the form of a human. So what do you think Shadim look like? Shadim also have a human form. We had in many instances, in many features, they're similar to a human. The Chazal Bebua, they saw that he had a shadow. The Yunami is in the Bua, so the Shadim also have shadows. The Chazal Bebua, the Bua, they saw a shadow of a shadow. In other words, you have sometimes when you're walking in the sun at a certain angle, you have the small shadow which is very dark, and then you have a much larger shadow which is much more faint. That's a shadow and a shadow, and humans have that. So maybe Shadim also have that. So what is it? The Bua, maybe those have a shadow and a shadow. Yonis is the demon. He had a name. Said to me, we had Yosef Shida, Yonis Shida, the Bua Islu, Bua Leslu. They have a shadow. They don't have a shadow of a shadow. And in Gemara and Nigel, it's very hard to understand what's the difference. Chassidus explains the whole idea of a shadow, which is not the pnimi, so it's not the person itself, it's only the makif, the surrounding the person. And you have the makif of a makif, and Klippa only has makif, they don't have makif of makif. So they have a bua, but they don't have a bua, dibba bua. So more of a dimut tzara have. How do you know it wasn't? Maybe this person was actually a co-wife, and she really wanted to set her up. So she made this sound from up the top of the mountain, and then she fled. When there's a time of danger, even though they're recognized. Let's say somebody's dying and he's in a pit or something, and he says, "Anybody hears my voice, please go and write a get quickly for my wife. I don't want her to be stuck with my brother. I want it to be a free woman. Go ahead and write a get to my wife." The thing is, you go ahead and write a get for his wife. You don't ask questions, interrogate him, and so on and so forth. And as long as he says his name, I'm this person, and this is my wife. Because that's like a Shas Sakana. Here also like a Shas Sakana, because this woman's an Aguna. If we don't rely on that voice that came from the mountain, she's going to be stuck the rest of her life. And we don't want a woman to remain chained or Aguna, so therefore we rely on that. Because as in Mishnah, we already had it before. When I went down to the door to work out the leap year because there was nobody there to show similar to him. But I found Nechemia Ish Beis Li. I found this person called Nechemia from the house of Beis Li. Amali told me, Shemaiti, I heard in Israel, Sheim Masinas Isha Beis here you don't, when a woman husband goes away and you don't rely on a single witness to go ahead and set her free. The only Tana in Israel who does rely is Yehuda ben Baba. When the Mason, I said to him, Kenan, you're right. Amelie said to me, Emerland, tell them Mishmi, my name. Atem, obviously he's a big Tana, this person here, a Choshev person. Atem Yedim, you know, Shamadina Mishabesha Begayasa. The Gemara concluded before, it means there's no way that I personally can travel to Israel because there's war and so on. So I couldn't get there. You somehow or another managed to get in, but I can't. The Kabalnim and Gamliel Hazakin. I heard that from Rabbi Gamliel Hazakin. Shemasin is a Isha al pi edachi. You rely on a single witness. Because Shabbat would say, so Rabbi Kiva said, when I came back to Israel and I related to Rabbi Gamliel, the grandson of Gamliel Hazakin, Samach Lidvara, he was very, very happy. I'm happy to hear that. No, they're very happy that they were able to free the women. They don't want women to be aguns. So he said, finally, I found a partner to Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba that we can rely on a single witness. He then actually remembered that when he was young, I guess, a number of people were killed in Tel Arza, the hill of Arza, Al Pi Eid Echad. And Rabbi Gamliel, I guess must be Rabbi Gamliel Zakin, he released all of these women based on the testimony of a single witness. So therefore that's when everything changed. After this story of Nehemiah, each Beis Li passed on Rabbi Akiva, that's when the law changed and it was accepted universally that a single witness and all these other rules, we had Eid Mitpi Eid and so on, and people are generally disqualified to be Eidim can also be Eidim, even a cotton. The who's going to machine Eidim Pi Eid, you can have, if you know, hearsay suddenly became relevant, Mitpi Evid from a slave beach from a woman, Pi Shifcha from a maid. They disagree. They say, but to Rabbi Akiva, and at the same time, we don't rely on a single witness to free her. Rabbi Akiva himself said, even though I agree that you could have a single Eidus, but you need someone who could qualify to be Eidus, not based on an Evid, not based on a Shivcha, and not based on craving my relatives. In other words, what Rabbi Akiva is saying here is that I believe you still need witnesses. A single witness and the woman doing her homework, that's good enough. But if you can have the single witness and someone who's disqualified to be a witness, then you have no witnesses. And just a woman alone is not good enough. That's Rabbi Akiva. The halach is that no, that we don't need witnesses at all. It's a milsa david leguli, it's something that will be revealed, and therefore the woman will do her homework, it will be good enough. We had this whole discussion before the Gemara. So the Gemara. So what's going on here? The Savar Rabbi Akiva concludes the Mishnah Al Isha Loi that you cannot rely on a woman. What Tanya Rabbi Rabbi Akiva? She loves the name of Akiva. Isha Nemenes Lahavi Gita. A woman can bring. Remember, we learned that five women that are disqualified from testifying when it comes to Yevama, like the mother-in-law, the sister-in-law, the co-wife, because we don't trust them. The daughter-in-law, we don't trust that they're actually being honest. But those women are believed to bring a get over. So they said to Rabbi Akiva, a woman, that a woman should be allowed to bring a get from a kal v'chomer. So Madach, a woman that the Chacham say are not believed to say that her husband died, like the mother-in-law and so on. Yet Ne'eman is are allowed to bring their gittin. Shemen is believed. Leibe mezbaila. They're believed to say. So they get to believe to gittin to zu, a woman, the wife. Talk about the wife. She's believed to say her husband died. The woman comes back and says, my husband died, you believe her. Surely she should breed the get of women. So surely she should be able to bring her own get. So a wife should be, so what is he clearly from the wording over here? You who agree that a wife can say her husband died, surely should be able to bring a get. So what do you see from, and Rabbi Akiva doesn't argue. In other words, Rabbi Akiva agrees that a wife is believed, that a woman is believed to say my husband died. So you say a woman is believed. How can you tell me the end of this mission? Rabbi Akiva says he cannot rely on women. He can only rely on a single aid echad, someone who's qualified to be with us. Here, clearly, in this discussion that they had with him, they said to him that a wife can come back and say, my husband died, and we would believe him. And they wanted to use that as a kal v'chomer to say, therefore, she should be able to bring back again and so on. So we see clearly that Rabbi Akiva holds, then a wife is believed. So Gemara says, you're right. Yeah. So we see, that not we see clearly that even though generally we say we don't believe them, over here we do believe them. So how can you tell me Rabbi Akiva holds you don't? And the Gemara like kasha. When Rabbi Akiva argued with them, it says that in our Mishnah, that's before they changed the rules. But that discussion they had with him about the get was after they changed the rules, and therefore, after they changed the rules, Rabbi Akiva, anybody can be a witness, even a nashi can be a witness as well. Yeah, because they're talking about bringing a get. When you bring a get, you have to also give testimony. You have to say, "B'fanei nechtam," we'll learn have to get in b'fanei nechtam. I saw it being written. I saw it being signed. So the question is whether a woman could bring a get. And they were arguing, of course you could. Even in them, of course you could. Even in other situations where generally not believed, if you believe them, surely you should be believed over here. So the Gemara Mishnah. Unrelated, said to him, there was a story, they said to Rabbi Akiva, there's a story, B'nai Levi, Shaholchu, they went to a place called Tzoya, in Hatamarim to Tzoya, the city of palm trees, and one of the people, the B'nai Levi, got very sick. So they were staying over in a hotel. They brought him to his hotel, and they left him there while they went to travel, and then they came back. When they came back, they said to the hotel, to the hostess there, where's our friend? She said to them, Mace, he died, v'kavartiv, and I buried him. And they they came back and said, you should get remarried. Now the question is, you're telling me Rabbi Akiva that a woman is not believed. Here's a pundikus, and yet she was believed. Stama woman, we have no idea what she is, and you're telling me that a Yiddish woman, we use the expression kehenes, but mean anybody, a bas Yisrael, an ordinary person, shouldn't be believed. If she says, you're saying that women are not believed, only know somebody who's qualified to be an Eid Echad. Here you see a story about a pundikus of this woman, and they believed her. No one has idea who that is. He said, if Rabbi Akiva still maintained his opinion, he said, if any woman would come forward and give us the same kind of testimony like this hostess, she would also be believed. What exactly did the hostess say that you're saying that? You should put pundigus, because it's more to the story than that. You missed out a critical part. That is, this pundigus Haitilahem brought out Maklai, the deceased person's stick, the tarmilai, and his backpack, the Sefer Torah should be in the hand. It wasn't just relying on her testimony. She had all of his items and articles over there. So therefore they knew that he didn't go any travel any further, that he obviously passed away over there. Says the Gemara, so Akiva still, this is before they changed the rules, was maintaining that not a woman is disqualified. Says the Gemara, my grey usa the pundikas. You tell me that every woman should be is better than a pundikas. Why are they better? They're the same. What's the difference? So the Gemara says this pundikas you think of the yid. Kind of pundikas. We're talking about a pundikas who is actually a goy, and that's what the Gemara is saying. If you believe this goy should host this, of course you should believe Yiddish women. And so now we just learned before you don't believe a goy unless they were just being masich with tumah. They talk innocently. So the Gemara says, this woman actually wasn't giving testimony; she was just talking. She walked around saying, "This is a stick, and this is a backpack, and this is the cave that buried it." So there's a masich with tumah, and that's why he believed. And they said, "Rabbi Kiva, well, if you can believe a goy masich with tumah, surely you should believe a Yiddish woman." So more further, and the Rabbanan felt that the moment she brought out all of these things to prove a point, it's no longer just talking innocently. No, the Rekiva felt she only brought it out that they should take it with them back home. The Chacham felt, they disagreed with Rekiva, they felt that this is not Masech of Tumah, then why should she bring all this evidence to support her story? It sounds like she's trying to tell them a story, she's gives Eidos, and she wants to prove that she's saying the truth. And therefore, she shouldn't be believed. And yet we believe as surely a Yid who's believed should be believed. Further, Abba Breda, Menuna Bachia, Pudik, so too Abba Breda learned. Pudikis, he was a guy, Umasichel Vitum Zeh, Makla, Zeh, Tamil, Zeh, Kevish, she's just telling him, pointing out, these are the things that are his. Says the Gemara, how can you tell me this is Masech Lefituma? Masech Lefituma means spontaneously they came forward and they tell us a story. That's called Masech Lefituma innocently. But if you ask them a question and they respond, that's no longer Masech Lefituma. So the who initiated the conversation? The rabbi said, "Where's our friend?" When the Levi said to her, "Where's our friend?" And then she said, "Oh, he's dead." That's no longer Masech Lefituma. That's responding to a question. That's more like, defending yourself or giving some kind of an edus. The Gemara says, "Kiven the no." There's one part of the story that's missing, an element of the story missing. Kiven the chazisnu bachya. They first saw her crying. Amarnu, they said, "Oh, what's going on here?" So we were actually responding to her emotions. She started this whole conversation, and then she said, "Therefore, that's called Masech Levitumah." So based on this, there's a whole discussion about Masech Levitumah. Even if we initiate the question, one question, and she answers, but then she continues her conversation, and in the course of the conversation she gives us more facts or something else that she says. Is that called Masech Levitumah or not? Because we initiated the conversation, but she went on to another part of the subject which we didn't ask, and maybe that's also called Masech Levitumah based on the Gemara says right here. Says the Gemara, we learned but there was a story. The person she came to testify about a woman that have time for a time. How do you know about how do you know this agent that you want to release his wife and say that she's free? How do you know all this? So he says here, I'll tell you. We were traveling out in the road. We were chased by these soldiers. This guy was a pretty strong guy, and he grabbed a hold of a branch of an olive tree. And he started to beat them. And it was like he broke it off, and then he started hitting all the people, the troops, and they basically ran away. They were frightened off. On my till, I couldn't believe it. The guy was a hell. The guy was a hero. I said to him, "Aryeh, Yashikecha, lion! Wow, Yashikecha, you single-handedly were able to chase off this army here." So the guy said, "Guess what? My name is Aryeh. How did you know? In fact, that's my nickname because I'm strong as a lion, or brazen as a lion." This is what the people call me. Yochanan, the son of Yonason. Aryeh the Michvar Shechaya, the lion from the city of Shechaya. The Yamim, a few days later, he got sick, the base he died. But Rav married off his wife based on what this person said. Based on what this person said. Rav the question of Tarfon didn't require, when it comes to matters of life and death, you have to investigate. You have to make all kinds of questions. Dirishas are chakira, the time of day, and dirishas are the general questions, what color clothing, to make sure that everything is correct. And over here, he didn't ask any questions. He just accepted the testimony. Reb Tarfon doesn't think you need Tishach Akira to release a woman. But Tani Milan Maisa Vanech is another story. A person, actually the same story, but another version of it. Reb Tarfon, how can you give this testimony that this person died? And even who they were traveling together. The guys were chased by soldiers. The he grabbed a hold of a branch of a fig tree. And he go ahead and he broke off the branch. But the previous story was an olive tree, and this is a fig tree. So maybe it's a different story, but it's a very similar story. And but from reading the Brisa, it sounds like it's exactly the same story, but he changed the story, or it's a different version. The herz is a guy he chased back the soldiers. Wow, thank you, line. You guessed my name correctly. They call me Yechanan ben Yenison Aryeh the Mikvah Shechaya. My name is Yechanan ben Yenison, the lion of Mikvah Shechaya. A few days later, he died. He got sick and he died. So therefore, I'm coming to tell you that this is such a name, died. Oh my Lord! So the Tafra started to play with him. He said to him, "Look, you told me Yechanan ben Yenison the Mikvah Shechaya. You told me that Aryeh was the name of the city, not that his name was Aryeh." Amalei, the guy said back, "Loi." He retorted, "That's not true. I told you Yechanan ben Yenison Aryeh, that he was known as the lion. Mikvah Shechaya. The diktik Olo Schneider's he asked him question 2 or 3 times. Basically, he played around with him. The kivin is the bottom. And every time, from every angle he came to him, the person basically maintained his original testimony. The Haysi that Tarfanas Ishtai, and he married off his wife. So here he interrogated him. In the first version, he did not interrogate him, and in the second version, he did interrogate him. So do you do Tishach Akira or not? He says here, Tanoi, it's an argument tonight. Time to be learned. The din is when it comes to din in the Fashas, we learn from Pasuk, you have to be doidish v'chaykin. You have to ask all these questions. And we also know about din in Mamanas, you also have to ask all these questions because we learn the Mishparecha Yilachem. Shall be the same. The reason the Chacham learned Sanhedrin, the Chacham came along and said that we're not going to ask too many questions when it comes to commercial law because people stopped lending money because they started to see they lend money and then the borrower would deny that they ever borrowed the money. The lender would have to bring witnesses and the witnesses were interrogated. And sometimes, you get caught out. Without realizing it, they trap you, and you get caught out, and then the whole case is thrown out, and the lender loses out. So it says, "What's a game? I'm not going to go through this. I'm doing the guy a favor, and then I have to find, I won't even find witnesses. Why would they want to be interrogated to help me out to get a few dollars?" So the Chomei Takana Shalaitinol Delas Bifnei Halavan. We don't want to slam the door shut for the face of the borrower. So when it comes to the Imamanis, we remove this Drisha V'Chakir. We ask them a few general questions, but we don't do the interrogations. And the question will be, where does this fit in when you want to release a woman? Because 2 things are happening. She is set free and she also receives a ksuba. So the question is, how do we view this? Do we view this as din lefashis or do we view this as din mamanis? The Gemara says, Tanai, it's an argument tonight. The time we learn, ain't boykin, agent not shabizh, you don't ask questions. And Rab Tarfon says boykin. So Rab Tarfon says you are boykin. And these 2 brides are arguing within Rab Tarfon what his opinion is. Because you Rabbi Kivi, don't you do? What's their argument based on? On Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Chanina said, Min ha'toyde, echadini mamanas, echadini fashes, b'dishach hakiri, you have to ask all of these questions. Shenemet says, Mishpat echad yilachem. There's one set of rules for everybody. So why is it that they changed around and said they don't need dishach hakira? They should latino delas b'fnei lovin. We don't want to slam the door shut in the face of those borrowers. So what's the crux of their argument? It's treated more like a monetary thing because when you allow her to get married, she also gets a ksuva as well. And therefore it's considered a matter of money. You're allowing a married woman to get married again. And if she's still a married woman, there's a question of misa. It's kedin nefashis damit, kedin nefashis. Now, that's the argument. Interesting is, how can you say that allowing a woman to get remarried is a case of money? Maybe the svara is, of course, it's the main purpose is to allow her to get remarried. The ksuba is like a side benefit. The difference is that the ksuba happens first. As soon as she's allowed to get remarried and she organizes herself to get remarried, she collects a ksuba. So the ksuba comes first, and maybe she will get remarried, maybe she won't get remarried. And because the ksuba comes first, therefore, they argue this is a case of money. And the other opinion says that even though the ksuba comes first, but since the main purpose of all of this is in order to, especially because it's not gonna, we're making lenient. The main purpose is to release it in order that she get married. Therefore, it's considered din in lefashos. So the Rishonim say that today there's no din in lefashos anymore. So maybe everyone would agree that you don't need Yishuch Hakira when it comes to matters of a Ksula. Okay, you can all learn the last line on your own, and this sort of more or less